My parents told me they were struggling for 11 years. Not struggling in the vague way that people describe financial difficulty when they mean they are being careful. Struggling in the specific way, with specific language, that produced in me a specific response, which was to never ask for anything, to manage everything myself, to feel guilty on the occasions when I wish things were different, because wishing for more when your family has nothing feels like a particular kind of selfishness that I had been trained, without anyone announcing the training, to avoid. I believed them for 11 years. I believed them because they were my parents and because the story was consistent and because I had no reason, until the Tuesday afternoon I found the bank statements, to look for one. My name is Natasha. I am 31 years old. I am a forensic accountant, which means I find things in numbers that other people have tried to hide, which is a detail that becomes relevant very quickly in this story. I have spent my career understanding how money moves when someone does not want it found, the particular patterns that emerge when a financial picture has been constructed rather than simply existing, the difference between a record that reflects reality and a record that has been shaped to produce a specific impression. I had applied those skills to hundreds of cases before the Tuesday I applied them to my own family. This is the story of what I found and what I did with it. The family. My brother Marcus is 4 years older than me. He has the particular quality of someone who has never been told no in a way that actually held, the ease of a person whose experience of the world has consistently confirmed that things will work out, not because he has worked for them but because someone has always been there to make sure they did. I did not understand the full shape of this when we were growing up because the architecture of family favoritism is not always visible from inside it. What I understood was that Marcus and I were different kinds of children and that our parents responded to us differently, but I filed this under personality rather than policy because it is easier to believe that a family simply has different dynamics with different children than to believe it has made a deliberate choice about which child matters more. Marcus had his college paid for. I knew this because it was not hidden, it was simply presented as the natural order of things. Marcus was older and his situation had come first, and by the time I was ready for college things were different. I took out loans. I paid them back over 7 years while working full-time and building a career that nobody in my family asked about with any regularity. Marcus had his apartment deposit covered. I knew this too because my mother mentioned it in passing once as though it were a minor logistical detail. When I moved into my first apartment I used money I had saved from 18 months of a second job I had worked on weekends. These things, individually, I had absorbed without turning them into a narrative. People absorb a great deal without turning it into a narrative when the alternative is a conclusion they are not ready to reach. The bank statements made the narrative impossible to avoid. The Tuesday. I was at my parents' house on a Tuesday afternoon in October helping my mother organize some paperwork after my father had mentioned they were having trouble with their filing system. This is the kind of thing I do for my parents, practical and useful, the contribution of someone who has always shown love through competence rather than through requests. I was working through a drawer of documents when I found a folder that was not labeled. Inside the folder were 7 years of bank statements, not my parents' main account, a secondary account I had not known existed, one that showed a consistent pattern of monthly transfers, significant ones, going to the same recipient account every single month for 7 years without a single gap. The recipient account belonged to Marcus. I did not react immediately. I am a forensic accountant. My first response to unexpected financial information is not emotional, it is analytical. I went through every statement in the folder carefully, the way I go through evidence professionally, building the picture from the numbers rather than from what I felt about the numbers. What the numbers showed was that my parents had been transferring an average of $2,000 per month to Marcus for 7 years. Across 7 years that was $168,000. Transferred quietly, consistently, and without anyone telling me it was happening while my mother told me twice a year that things were tight. I put the folder back exactly where I had found it. I finished helping with the filing. I said goodbye to my mother warmly and drove home. That evening I opened my laptop and I started building a document. I spent 3 weeks building the document before I did anything with it. This is not how most people would respond to finding out their parents had been secretly transferring $168,000 to their brother over 7 years while telling them the family had nothing to spare. Most people would call immediately, or drive over, or send a message that night while the feeling was still raw and the words came from the unedited place rather than the considered one. I am not most people. I am someone who has spent a decade understanding that evidence presented before it is complete is evidence that can be challenged, reframed, and dismissed by the people it implicates, and that the most important variable in any financial confrontation is not how quickly you move but how thoroughly you have prepared before you do. I pulled every piece of financial information available to me legally and through the ordinary channels of a daughter who had occasionally helped her parents with their paperwork over the years. I cross-referenced the monthly transfers with dates that I remembered, the year I told my mother I was struggling to make my loan payments and she said she wished she could help but things were tight, the year I worked a second job on weekends to save for my apartment deposit because I had not wanted to ask, the year my father said they had nothing extra when I mentioned I was considering a professional certification that cost $2,000. I placed each of those moments beside the corresponding bank statement. The month my mother said she wished she could help, the transfer to Marcus that month was $2,500. The month I was saving for my deposit, $2,000 to Marcus. The month my father said they had nothing extra for my certification, Marcus received $2,000 4 days later. The document I built was 42 pages long. It contained 7 years of transfer records, a timeline of every conversation I could recall in which my parents had cited financial difficulty, a cross-reference table showing what had been transferred to Marcus in the same month or within 2 weeks of each of those conversations, and a one-page summary at the front that presented the total, $168,000, alongside a simple question which I wrote and then rewrote 4 times until I had the version that said exactly what I meant without anything extra attached to it. The question was, when were you planning to tell me? I printed the document. I put it in a plain folder. I called my mother and told her I would like to come for dinner on Saturday. The dinner. My father was home. Marcus was not there, which I had anticipated because Marcus rarely came for regular dinners and I had not wanted him present for this particular one. We ate first. I want to be clear about that because I think it matters that I sat at that table and ate my mother's cooking and talked about ordinary things for an hour before I put the folder on the table, because I was not there to perform anger or to make the evening into something theatrical. I was there to have a conversation that had been 11 years overdue and I wanted to have it with a full stomach and a clear head. After dinner I put the folder on the table. My father looked at it before he looked at me. My mother looked at me before she looked at it, which told me something about which of them had been more aware of the risk of this moment arriving. I told them what was inside it before they opened it, the way I brief clients before I present findings, so that the information lands in a prepared space rather than an unprepared one. I told them I had found the account statements in their filing drawer 3 weeks earlier. I told them I had spent 3 weeks documenting what the statements showed. I told them the document on the table contained 7 years of evidence and a question I would like them to answer. My mother opened the folder. My father looked at the table. The silence lasted a long time. My father spoke first. He said it was complicated and that they had always intended to tell me and that Marcus had needed the help in ways that were difficult to explain quickly and that they had always known I was capable of managing on my own. I let him finish completely. Then I said that capable was not the same as not needing. That a daughter who manages on her own is still a daughter who deserves the truth about why she is managing on her own. That $168,000 across 7 years was not a complicated situation. It was a decision. And decisions have reasons, and the reason, when I looked at the evidence, appeared to be that Marcus was worth the investment and I was worth the assumption that I would be fine. Neither of them said anything for a long time. My mother cried. I want to say that plainly because I think it is important to include it rather than skip past it, because her crying was real and I did not doubt that it was real, and the fact that it was real did not change anything about what I had said or what the document on the table contained. Genuine emotion and genuine accountability are not the same thing, and I had spent enough of my life allowing the first to substitute for the second that I was not willing to do it again at this particular table on this particular evening. My father attempted several explanations across the following hour. He said Marcus had struggled in ways that were not always visible. He said the transfers had begun during a period when Marcus was in genuine difficulty and had simply continued because stopping felt complicated once the pattern was established. He said they had always believed I was going to be fine because I had always been fine, and that believing someone will be fine is not the same as not caring about them. I listened to all of it without interrupting because I wanted the complete version before I responded to any of it. Then I said one thing. I said that I had been fine because I had made myself fine, alone, without the knowledge that there was $168,000 available in my family that I had never been told about, and that the version of fine I had built was real and mine and I was proud of it, and that none of that changed the fact that I had been lied to for 11 years by the people who were supposed to tell me the truth about my own family. I picked up the folder. I told them I was leaving a copy of the document with them because I thought they should have it and because I had 3 more copies and did not need it back. I told them I loved them in the complicated way that you love people who have genuinely failed you without stopping to love them. I told them I needed time and that I would be in touch when I was ready. I drove home. I did not cry until I was inside my own apartment with the door closed, and then I cried for about 20 minutes, the specific kind of crying that happens when you have held something together for a very long time and the holding is finally over. Then I made tea and I went to bed. The call. Marcus called me 11 days later. Not to address the dinner. Not because my parents had told him what had happened, or if they had told him he had chosen not to lead with it. He called because he needed something, the way Marcus called when he needed something, with the easy confidence of someone who has never had a request met with a refusal that actually held. He needed a short-term loan. He said short-term with the particular emphasis of someone who uses the phrase to make the ask feel smaller than it is. He said he was in a temporary situation and that things would resolve quickly and that he would pay it back without question. I did not say yes. I did not say no immediately either. I asked him if our parents had mentioned anything to him recently about a conversation we had had. He said they had mentioned I was going through something and that I was being a bit sensitive about some old family stuff. I sat with that phrase for a moment. Old family stuff. 11 years of monthly transfers totaling $168,000 described as old family stuff by the person who had received every dollar of it. I told him I was going to send him something and that I would like him to call me back after he had looked at it. I sent him the document. All 42 pages. With the same question on the front page that I had left with my parents. When were you planning to tell me? He did not call back that day. He did not call back the following day. On the 3rd day he sent a text message that said he had not known the full extent of it and that he was sorry and that things between us were probably going to be different now. I wrote back 2 words. I said, they are. I have not spoken to Marcus since that text exchange. I have spoken to my parents twice, briefly, in the careful way that people speak when they are rebuilding something that was damaged by the truth rather than by a lie, which is a slower and more complicated kind of rebuilding because the truth does not apologize for arriving. I am still a forensic accountant. I am still 31. I am still fine, in the way I have always been fine, which is through my own work and my own choices and my own version of a life that nobody funded for me. The difference is that now I know exactly what fine has cost me. And I have stopped pretending that cost was nothing. If someone in your family managed the truth instead of telling it, leave a comment. Tell me where you are watching from. Subscribe for the next one. This is Hidden Truth Revenge, where the truth always finds a way.